My brightest student was homeless. I never knew for 4 years. Hello, dear friends. I'm Mr. Harrison. I've been teaching high school mathematics for 28 years, and today I need to share with you the most humbling and eye-opening story of my entire career. This is a story about assumptions, about hidden struggles, and about a student who taught me that brilliance can flourish even in the most impossible circumstances. What I'm about to tell you will challenge everything you think you know about student achievement, about poverty, and about the incredible resilience of the human spirit. It's a story that changed not only how I see my students, but how I see the world. It was September 2018 when I first met David Chen, a quiet 15-year-old who had just transferred to Jefferson High School in Sacramento, California. David was assigned to my advanced placement calculus class, unusual for a sophomore, but his test scores and previous academic record indicated he was more than capable of handling the rigorous coursework. From the moment David walked into my classroom, I knew he was special. He had this intense focus, this way of listening to mathematical concepts as if they were pieces of beautiful music. When I would explain complex theories or work through challenging problems, David would follow along with an understanding that went beyond memorization. He truly grasped the elegant logic underlying every equation. David was tall for his age, with straight black hair that he kept neatly trimmed and dark eyes that seemed to absorb every detail of our lessons. He dressed simply, but always looked clean and put together. He wore khaki pants, button-down shirts, nothing flashy but appropriate for school. He carried himself with a quiet dignity that made him seem older than his 15 years. What impressed me most about David wasn't just his mathematical ability, which was extraordinary, but his work ethic. Every assignment was completed perfectly and turned in on time. His homework was always neat, thorough, and showed not just the correct answers, but elegant problem-solving approaches that sometimes surpassed what I had taught in class. When we had tests, David would finish early but never seemed rushed. He would carefully review his work, then sit quietly until time was called, never showing off or drawing attention to himself. His test scores were consistently perfect or near perfect, but he never acted superior or boastful about his achievements. During class discussions, David would contribute insightful questions and observations, but he never dominated conversations. He had this way of making profound mathematical connections seem effortless, as if the relationships between complex concepts were obvious to him in ways they weren't to other students. What struck me as slightly unusual was David's social behavior. While he was always polite and respectful with his classmates, he didn't seem to form close friendships. He would arrive at school right on time each morning and leave promptly when classes ended. He never participated in study groups, rarely lingered to chat with other students, and didn't seem interested in extracurricular activities. When I asked him about joining the math team or academic decathlon, David politely declined, saying he had other commitments after school. I assumed he had a part-time job or family responsibilities. Many of our students worked to help support their families. David's lunch habits were also somewhat different from most students. While other kids would eat in the cafeteria or hang out in the courtyard, David typically spent his lunch period in the library either reading or working on homework. When I occasionally saw him eating, it was usually something simple like a peanut butter sandwich or an apple, which I attributed to personal preference rather than any underlying issue. As David's sophomore year progressed, my respect and admiration for him continued to grow. He wasn't just academically gifted. He was kind, thoughtful, and possessed an emotional maturity that was rare in teenagers. When classmates struggled with concepts he had mastered easily, David would quietly offer help without being condescending or impatient. I remember one particular incident that highlighted David's character. We were working on a challenging unit about differential equations, and several students were becoming frustrated with the complexity of the material. During one class period, I noticed David had finished the assigned problems quickly and was sitting quietly while others continued to work. "David," I said, "would you mind helping Maria with problem number 7? I think you might be able to explain it in a way that makes sense to her." Without hesitation, David moved his desk next to Maria's and began patiently walking her through the problem. He didn't just give her the answer. He helped her understand the underlying principles so she could solve similar problems on her own. His teaching approach was gentle, encouraging, and remarkably effective. After that day, I began asking David to serve as an informal tutor for struggling students. He never complained or acted like it was beneath him. Instead, he seemed to genuinely enjoy helping his classmates succeed, and his patient explanations often reached students in ways my own teaching hadn't. As David's junior year began, his academic performance remained consistently exceptional. He had moved on to advanced placement statistics and was also taking calculus-based physics, maintaining perfect grades in both courses. His teachers consistently praised not only his academic abilities, but his character, work ethic, and positive influence on other students. College recruiters began reaching out to David during his junior year, offering full scholarships to prestigious universities. MIT, Stanford, Caltech, and Harvard all expressed interest in recruiting him for their mathematics and engineering programs. David handled this attention with the same quiet dignity he brought to everything else, never letting the recognition go to his head. When I would ask David about his college preferences or career goals, he would give thoughtful, mature responses about wanting to use mathematics to solve real-world problems and help people. But he never talked about his family's plans for supporting his college education, and he seemed to avoid discussions about his home life in general. I assumed David came from a stable, supportive family that valued education. How else could he maintain such consistent academic excellence? I imagined parents who emphasized the importance of learning, a quiet home environment conducive to studying, and perhaps family discussions about mathematical concepts over dinner. During David's senior year, he was selected as valedictorian. His final grades were perfect. His standardized test scores were in the 99th percentile, and he had been accepted to Harvard University with a full scholarship to study applied mathematics. As his calculus teacher for 3 of his 4 years at Jefferson High, I felt an enormous sense of pride in David's achievements. He represented everything I hoped to accomplish as an educator, inspiring a brilliant young mind to reach its full potential and prepare for a future of unlimited possibilities. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday evening in June. As valedictorian, David would be delivering the commencement address to his graduating class, their families, and the faculty. I was looking forward to hearing his speech and celebrating his remarkable journey from quiet transfer student to academic superstar. The ceremony was beautiful, held on our football field under a clear June sky. David's valedictorian speech was eloquent and inspiring, focusing on the importance of perseverance, the value of education, and the responsibility we all have to help others succeed. He spoke about overcoming challenges and never giving up on your dreams, themes that resonated powerfully with the audience. As I listened to David speak, I felt proud not just of his academic achievements, but of the thoughtful, principled young man he had become. His words demonstrated the same maturity and wisdom he had shown throughout his high school career. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the school gymnasium where graduates mingled with their families and teachers. I was chatting with colleagues and congratulating other students when I noticed David standing alone near the refreshment table, looking somewhat lost in the crowd of celebrating families. I approached him to offer my congratulations and to meet his parents, whom I realized I had never encountered during his 4 years at our school. "David," I said, "congratulations on an outstanding speech and an incredible 4 years. I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished. Are your parents here? I'd love to meet them and tell them what an exceptional son they have." David's expression changed suddenly, and I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Full vulnerability, sadness, and what looked like fear. "Mr. Harrison," he said quietly, "could I talk to you privately for a few minutes? There's something I need to tell you." We walked to my empty classroom, away from the noise and celebration of the reception. David sat down at one of the desks where he had spent so many hours over the past 4 years, and I could see that he was struggling with emotion. "Mr. Harrison," he began, his voice shaking slightly, "I need to tell you something that I've never told anyone at school, something I've been hiding for my entire time here." I sat down across from him, concerned by his obvious distress. "David, whatever it is, you can tell me. You know I care about you and want to help, however I can." David took a deep breath and looked directly at me. "Mr. Harrison, my mother and I have been homeless for the past 4 years. We've been living in our car since I was a freshman." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. David, my star student, the valedictorian, the young man I had assumed came from a stable, supportive home, had been homeless throughout his entire high school career. David, I whispered, struggling to process what he had just told me. I had no idea. How is that possible? We've gotten very good at hiding it, David explained, his voice becoming steadier as he continued. When I was 14, my mother lost her job as an accountant when her company downsized. She couldn't find work that paid enough to keep our apartment, and we didn't have any family to help us. Rather than put me in foster care, she decided we would live in our car and I would continue going to school. I stared at David in amazement, trying to reconcile this revelation with the image I had of the successful, well-adjusted student I thought I knew. Every morning, David continued, my mother would drop me off at school on her way to whatever temporary job she had found, house cleaning, food service, retail work. I would spend the entire day at school using the library for homework and studying. After school, I would stay late for tutoring or just to use the computer lab until the building closed. Where did you sleep? Where did you shower? How did you manage to always look so put together? We have a routine, David explained. We move around to different locations every few nights. Parking lots at 24-hour stores, quiet residential streets. Sometimes the parking lot at the beach. For showers, I have a gym membership that my mother pays for with money from her part-time jobs. I would shower there every morning before school. I was beginning to understand the pieces that had never quite made sense to me. David's consistent punctuality, his reluctance to participate in after-school activities, his preference for spending lunch periods in the library, his careful management of every minute of his time. David, why didn't you tell anyone? We have programs to help students in situations like yours. There are resources available, people who could have helped you and your mother. David looked down at his hands. Mr. Harrison, I was terrified that if anyone found out, they would put me in foster care and separate me from my mother. She's all I have, and I'm all she has. We made a pact that we would figure this out together and that I would continue my education no matter what. But how did you manage to excel academically under such difficult circumstances? How did you find time and space to study? The public library became my second home, David said. I would go there every day after school, and on weekends, they have computers, internet access, quiet study spaces, and it's warm and safe. I did all of my homework there, all of my research, all of my test preparation. I did all of my homework there. All of my research, all of my test preparation. Why the sometimes you of? He paused, gathering his thoughts. In some ways, being homeless actually motivated me to work harder. I knew that education was my only path to a different life, not just for me, but for my mother. Every perfect test score, every A on an assignment was a step toward a future where we wouldn't have to live in a car anymore. I felt tears forming in my eyes as I began to truly understand the magnitude of what David had accomplished. Lowly, this young man had not only survived 4 years of homelessness, but had thrived academically, despite circumstances that would have broken many adults. David, you said your mother has been working part-time jobs. What does she do now? She currently works at 3 different places, cleaning offices at night, working at a grocery store on weekends, and doing data entry from the library when she can get computer access. She's incredibly smart and skilled, but it's hard to find stable work when you don't have a permanent address or reliable transportation. And she's been doing this all to make sure you could stay in school. Yes, David said, his voice breaking slightly. She could have moved to a different city where housing might be cheaper, or she could have taken a full-time job that required us to move constantly. But she insisted that my education came first, that we would make whatever sacrifices necessary to keep me in the same school system so I could graduate and go to college. I was overwhelmed by the dedication and love this mother had shown for her son's future, and by the strength and determination David had shown in pursuing his education despite such challenging circumstances. David, where is your mother now? Is she here for your graduation?
She's working tonight,
David said sadly. She couldn't afford to take the evening off, and we need every dollar she can earn. But she's so proud of me. Mr. Harrison, she tells me every day that watching me succeed makes all of the struggle worthwhile. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. Here was this incredible young man who had achieved something truly extraordinary, and he was spending his graduation night alone because his mother was working to survive. David, you have to let me help you. Both of you, this is not something you should have to handle on your own anymore. Mr. Harrison, you've already helped me more than you know. You believed in me. You challenged me. You gave me opportunities to grow academically. You treated me like any other student, and that meant everything to me. But I should have known. I should have seen the signs, should have asked the right questions. No, David said firmly. We worked very hard to make sure no one would know. We didn't want pity or charity. We wanted to prove that we could overcome our circumstances through hard work and determination. David reached into his backpack and pulled out an envelope. Mr. Harrison, I wrote you a letter that I want you to read after I leave tonight. It explains everything I couldn't say before, and it thanks you for all the ways you've influenced my life. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us processing the emotional weight of this conversation. Finally, David stood up and extended his hand to me. Mr. Harrison, thank you for 4 years of excellent teaching and for caring about your students. I hope someday I can be the kind of teacher you've been to me. I stood up and, instead of shaking his hand, pulled David into a hug. You're going to do incredible things, David, and I'm going to make sure you and your mother get the support you need as you transition to college. After David left, I sat alone in my classroom and opened the letter he had given me. What I read was the most powerful piece of writing I had ever received from a student. Dear Mr. Harrison, as I write this letter on the night before graduation, I want to tell you the complete truth about my high school experience and thank you for the role you've played in helping me survive and thrive during the most difficult period of my life. For the past 4 years, my mother and I have been homeless. We lost our apartment when I was 14, and rather than be separated through the foster care system, we chose to live in our car and maintain the illusion of stability so that I could continue my education. Every day when I walked into your classroom, I left behind the uncertainty and fear of our living situation and entered a world where mathematical truth and logical reasoning provided the stability and predictability that was missing from every other aspect of my life. Your classroom became my sanctuary, a place where my mind could focus on beautiful, elegant problems that had clear solutions. You never knew that the homework assignments you graded so carefully were completed in public libraries, that the tests I took were prepared for in 24-hour restaurants, where my mother and I would buy coffee and sit for hours, or that my perfect attendance record was maintained, despite not having a reliable place to sleep each night. What you did know was that you had a student who loved mathematics, and you nurtured that love with challenging problems, engaging lessons, and opportunities to help my classmates. You treated me with respect and dignity, never making me feel different or lesser than my peers. You saw my potential and believed in my ability to succeed. When college recruiters visited our school, you advocated for me and helped me navigate the application process. When I struggled with particularly difficult concepts, you stayed after school to provide extra help. When I seemed quiet or withdrawn, you checked on me with genuine concern for my well-being. You probably don't realize that your classroom was often the warmest place I experienced during cold winter months, or that your encouraging comments on my assignments sometimes provided the only positive feedback I received during difficult weeks. Your belief in my abilities gave me hope when our circumstances felt overwhelming. Mr. Harrison, you saved my life by giving me a reason to persevere through the darkest period of my adolescence. Education became my pathway to hope, and mathematics became my language for describing a world that could make sense, even when my daily reality felt chaotic and uncertain. I am going to Harvard University in the fall, something that would never have been possible without the foundation you helped me build. But more importantly, I am going with confidence in my abilities, with problem-solving skills that extend far beyond mathematics, and with a deep appreciation for teachers who see potential in every student who walks through their classroom door. Someday I hope to return to teaching and to provide the same kind of stable, nurturing academic environment for students who might be facing their own hidden struggles. I want to be the kind of teacher who sees beyond the surface and recognizes that brilliance can flourish even in the most challenging circumstances. Thank you for 4 years of excellent instruction, for believing in me when I sometimes doubted myself, and for creating a classroom where learning was always the priority. You will always hold a special place in my heart as the teacher who helped me discover that mathematics could be both beautiful and liberating. With deepest gratitude and respect, David Chen. Reading David's letter, I was humbled by my own lack of awareness and inspired by his incredible resilience. This young man had hidden homelessness so effectively that none of his teachers, counselors, or administrators had suspected his situation. He had maintained perfect academic performance while dealing with challenges that would have overwhelmed most adults. Over the following weeks, I worked with David and his mother to connect them with social services and housing assistance programs. Through a combination of nonprofit organizations, church groups, and community resources, we were able to help them find temporary housing and eventually a small apartment. David's mother, Linda Chen, was an incredibly strong and intelligent woman who had sacrificed everything to ensure her son's educational success. When I met her, I was struck by her dignity, her fierce love for David, and her determination to rebuild their lives. She had been quietly working multiple jobs and saving every possible dollar to help pay for David's college expenses that weren't covered by his scholarship. As David prepared to leave for Harvard, I helped connect him with additional financial aid resources and support programs for first-generation college students. The university's financial aid office was impressed by David's story and his achievements, and they provided additional assistance to ensure he would have everything he needed to succeed. The day David left for college, he and his mother came to visit me at school. Linda thanked me for supporting David and for helping them transition to stable housing, but I knew that I had received far more from David than I had given to him. David's freshman year at Harvard was challenging but successful. He sent me periodic updates about his courses, his research opportunities, and his growing interest in applied mathematics and social justice. His experiences with homelessness had motivated him to explore how mathematical modeling could be used to address issues like housing inequality and poverty. During David's sophomore year, he founded a tutoring program that paired Harvard students with homeless youth in the Boston area, providing academic support and mentorship to young people facing similar challenges to what he had experienced. The program was incredibly successful and eventually expanded to other universities. When David came home for winter break during his sophomore year, he visited my classroom and spoke to my current students about the importance of education and perseverance. He didn't share the details of his homelessness, but he talked about overcoming obstacles and using education as a tool for creating positive change. After his presentation, one of my students approached me privately. "Mr. Harrison, I think David understands something about struggle that most successful people don't." There was something in the way he talked about education being a lifeline that made me think he's been through something really difficult. This student's observation reminded me that David's experiences had given him not just resilience and determination, but also empathy and wisdom that would serve him well throughout his life. David graduated from Harvard with highest honors and was accepted to MIT for graduate studies in applied mathematics. His thesis research focused on developing mathematical models to optimize resource allocation for homeless service providers, work that directly grew out of his personal experiences and his desire to help others facing similar challenges. Today, Dr. David Chen is a professor of applied mathematics at Stanford University, where he continues his research on using mathematical modeling to address social justice issues. He has published extensively on housing policy, poverty reduction, and educational equity, and his work has influenced policy decisions at both state and national levels. He also continues his work with homeless youth, serving on the boards of several nonprofit organizations, and regularly speaking at schools and conferences about the hidden struggles that many students face. His message is always the same: every student has potential, regardless of their circumstances, and education can truly be a pathway to transformation. David and I have maintained a close relationship over the years. He visits whenever he's in Sacramento, and we correspond regularly about his research, his teaching, and his ongoing advocacy work. He often tells me that his high school experience taught him that great teaching isn't just about delivering content, It's about creating environments where students feel valued, challenged, and supported. Looking back on David's 4 years at Jefferson High School, I'm amazed by what he accomplished and humbled by what I failed to see. This brilliant young man was facing challenges that I couldn't have imagined, yet he maintained perfect academic performance and never once complained or asked for special consideration. David's story has fundamentally changed how I approach teaching and how I see my students. I now know that any student sitting in my classroom might be dealing with circumstances I can't see or imagine. That quiet, well-prepared student might be working twice as hard as their peers just to maintain the appearance of normalcy. I've learned to look beyond surface behaviors and academic performance to try to understand the whole person sitting in my classroom. I've become more intentional about creating opportunities for students to seek help or support without having to reveal personal details they might prefer to keep private. Most importantly, David taught me that assumptions about students' backgrounds and circumstances can blind us to their true achievements and potential. His academic success was even more remarkable because of his challenges, not in spite of them. His determination to succeed despite homelessness demonstrated a strength of character that couldn't be measured by any standardized test. Since David's graduation, I've become more involved in identifying and supporting students who might be facing housing insecurity or other hidden challenges. Our school now has better protocols for recognizing signs of student homelessness and connecting families with resources and support services. David's story has also inspired me to advocate for educational equity and support for at-risk students at the district and state level. I frequently share his story with his permission when speaking to policymakers and fellow educators about the importance of wraparound services and comprehensive support for students facing economic hardship. Every year I think about David when I meet my new classes. I look at each student and remind myself that I may be seeing only the surface of their lives, that beneath their academic performance and classroom behavior may be stories of struggle, resilience, and determination that I can't imagine. David Chen taught me that brilliance can flourish in the most unlikely circumstances, that the human spirit is capable of incredible resilience, and that education truly can be a transformative force in a young person's life. But most importantly, he taught me that every student deserves to be seen, valued, and supported, regardless of their circumstances. The young man who sat in my calculus class for 3 years, solving complex equations with elegant precision, was also solving the much more complex problem of how to survive, maintain dignity, and pursue dreams despite facing adult-level challenges as a teenager. His solution to that problem was as beautiful and remarkable as any mathematical proof he ever completed. Today, when I teach about the beauty of mathematical relationships and the power of logical reasoning, I think about David and how mathematics provided him with stability and hope during a period of enormous uncertainty. Numbers and equations became his constants in a world where almost everything else was variable. David's story reminds me that we never know which of our students might be fighting battles we can't see, achieving success despite obstacles we can't imagine, or finding in our classrooms the stability and support that's missing from other areas of their lives. The greatest privilege of being a teacher is that we get to witness young people overcome challenges and achieve their potential. David's story is a powerful reminder that our role as educators extends far beyond delivering curriculum. We have the opportunity to provide sanctuary, encouragement, and hope to students who need it most. Thank you, David, for teaching me that homelessness doesn't define a person's potential, that circumstances don't determine destiny, and that sometimes the most remarkable achievements come from the most unexpected places. Your story continues to inspire me and my students every day.